Welcome back to the Journey Podcast. I'm your co-host, Emma Jackson.
And I'm Jose Escalera. I did not space out this time.
Good. And we are back with Liz and Kelly from the Brivik Media Group, now Avail Media. You guys. Woo-hoo.
So, before we start this episode, I'm going to be very honest with you guys. I just got into marketing a few years ago. And before I got in, I honestly didn't know anything about media buying. Emma Jackson actually educated me on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm curious, just to be completely honest, how many people do you have to actually explain what you guys do?
Everybody.
Yeah.
So typically I'll just say we're in advertising, or if someone wants to press on it, I go, do you see commercials? Do you see billboards? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. And I'm like, I buy those. I rent them. I buy the space. And so they kind of understand it at that point. But it's a side of advertising that not many people understand. We were just talking about Mad Men. When you think about Mad Men, you think of Don Draper, you think of creative. But there's that guy Harry in the background, and that's what we do. So when Mad Men was like popular, I'd go, I'm Harry. That's who I am.
I'm just pointing at this. This is free content tips for you guys. This is a perfect TikTok or IG reel. You get a clip from Mad Men, zoom in on Harry, boom, that's us.
Yeah.
You know, and then it kind
That's
of
her
dives
creative
into
side
your
right there.
story.
That's definitely
So
her creative
yeah.
side.
there you go. Free love
Thank
for
you.
creative. No, but I think you're right. And I would love to hear your words of how would you describe media buying? Yes, you did that, but like the actual art of what you do and the science behind it to someone who doesn't know what it is.
Yeah. So media planning and buying is basically you're connecting that creative, that message to the right person is kind of the summary of what we do. And there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. Sure, you can buy a Super Bowl spot, but how do you get to that point? So the first part is something called planning. Planning is learning the consumer, learning the goals of your client, doing all the research and figuring out kind of what puzzle pieces do we need to create a successful campaign with media. And then you go into the buying part, which is when you're going to go, okay, I have my game plan. Now I know I want to do some streaming TV, I want to do some social, I want to do some billboards, and you start working with different vendors to create those campaigns. That's where you're negotiating, you're coming up with added value, you're getting the creative over to them. And then after that, which is the third part that many people don't talk about, is stewardship. So stewardship is really, hey, we did all of it, but now we're making sure that it's running successfully, and that do we need to pivot? Is something not working? Do we need to change creative? And so, you know, the campaign doesn't end with buying everything. The campaign ends after the stewardship and making sure that what we purchased is what we got.
You guys have KPIs for those metrics?
Oh.
I mean, those spots?
Yeah. So it totally depends on, what the goal of the campaign is. So I think Kelly mentioned that in the planning period, it's a big part of it is why are you trying to do this? Like, what's the why? What are you hoping to achieve? Because you have long term and short term, and they're going to have very different needs and tactics and measurement. So if someone wants just branding awareness, you're going to measure that very differently than someone that's looking for straight conversions. And the tactics you use are going to be different. So if it's straight conversion, you're probably going to pick media that really reaches like lower funnel. So you're going to be more in the digital space, display. And then if you're going brand awareness, you're going to be using larger media. So your TV, your billboards, your broadcast. There's always a good mix of both, but understanding really like what's the need right now. And then also making sure that whatever you're doing now isn't cannibalizing the future. And what I mean by that is people that focus so on the bottom funnel, you miss the opportunity to grow your brand in the market. So understanding that balance of what are your immediate needs and future needs. And then that's how you get to the KPIs, because you got to understand what the goals are clearly up front so that we can pick tactics that actually are going to get there. Because I think there's nothing worse than starting a campaign and it being like, oh yeah, just a branding awareness. And so you build it all out based on that. You set your KPIs for that. And then feedback is it's not working. We're not getting any calls. It's like, oh, well, the campaign wasn't set up for it. Not saying they can't pivot and get there, but then the whole planning was for nothing.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but since our audience is not always people who are super into marketing, we have people in business of all different kinds. I want to pick apart that terminology of bottom and top funnel.
Yeah.
So for us, doing a creative for a campaign like this, bottom funnel would be perhaps like an offer or a deal or something that's like, buy now, click this link for 10% off. And it's just like your whole goal is to get people to purchase. And then usually you're tracking those conversions. And it's a very much your media buy is tied to conversions in some way, shape, or form. Whereas brand awareness is like, did you know we exist? Like, we've been trusted, we've been around for 25 years. It's more of building your brand and sharing it to the broader community, because there's that old adage that someone sees, an ad 7 to 9 times or something before they actually call you. It's nowadays it's so much more because we just have content all around us. But usually by the time you see that offer that makes you buy, you've seen a lot of other content. Like I will look at a company that sells purses, for example. And if I actually decide to purchase that purse, I realize, well, I saw that TikTok where they showed the amazing quality of the purse. I saw that TikTok of that fashion influencer where I loved what she was, she was wearing that bag, or I was in the subway and I saw this advertisement, and it just all kind of builds upon that moment of purchase. Is that how you guys would describe it too?
Yep, I think that's perfect. Top funnel is you're entering a market and nobody knows who you are.
Mm-hmm.
We call it a billboard. It could be a digital placement. And then bottom funnel is you're trying to get that action.
Mm-hmm.
So awareness and then action. And many times digital is where that lower funnel is. It's your search. It's your clickable pieces, because you can track those a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
But like Liz said, a combination really is helpful. The billboard is harder to track attribution than a search ad. So, but they all work together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think on the media planning side, another piece of like top funnel, bottom funnel that you don't get it as in the creative spaces, considering the audience as well. So there are people that are not in your market right now to buy.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're just going bottom of the funnel, you can get really narrow. So you can look at specific zip codes, you can look at certain demographics that are most likely to be your customer and pick media that matches up with that. But by going really narrow, that's great. You're reaching the people that are most likely to be in market to buy at this moment. If you do all of that there, then you're missing anyone that's currently not in the market to buy. So that's another way that media can also play in that role of top funnel, bottom funnel, is how narrow you're taking your target.
Also, audiences that you don't realize that you have. We see that happen with clients of ours where you are so convinced this is my audience. You're like, I know that, my audience is college age kids, and then you miss there's an entire demographic, and then a mommy blog picks it up and you're like, my product is really popular with the moms. I had no idea. And it's like, well, maybe if you had started with top funnel, you would have known that, because you would have actually, given the opportunity out there. So,
well, and that kind of goes back to the first step in our industry of planning. So if I'm meeting with someone and they're like college students, I'm like, great. Then what we do is we have lots of research available to us. And so we'll start overlaying things to see, is that correct? And there's been a lot of times where someone will go, it's adults 45-64 and their household income is 200K plus. And we're like, okay, so we will put that in, but we'll also just kind of open it up to see what other demographics. And then we'll go back and go, we agree that this is a good audience, but you're leaving a whole chunk behind. And here's some data that shows that 35 to 44-year-olds love your product, and you can actually lower your household income to 75K. But that's the beauty of the planning part of it, is that you think your audience is this, but actually we're going to give you a whole different, like, another segment that you can look at, and it's a good opportunity. And to your point, it might be generating more conversions.
And it's so data backed and data driven. I mean, Jose, a lot of what we do, in this dynamic, it has changed a bit, but I'm often the one, like, Jose is very, very creative, especially in the podcast side. But he's also the one that's like, okay, what are the numbers?
Yeah.
What's our growth looking like? I need to see, because as the CEO, it's very much like, I need to see progress.
Yep.
I need to see growth and progression. And so we talk about that all the time, about figuring out
the right balance.
The right balance and making an assumption, but then always testing. We bring up A/B testing all the time of just, our first guess probably isn't right. Or even if it's right, it may not be the best version of that. So media buying, you really get that chance to test out all of your options over time. But it's something, I feel like there's still a lot of education working with different businesses to understand why that's so important. So, I mean, what are some of the biggest impacts that you all have seen working in media buying on different kinds of clients?
I think it's the amount of media you can look at or consider for a client. Today, it's extremely fragmented. It's hard to kind of grab that person. In in the 50s, there was 3 channels, so it wasn't that hard. Now you have your broadcast, you have your cable, you have your streaming networks, and then you have 1 billion websites, and you have all these social media channels. How do you reach them and create a good frequency? So that's probably one of the biggest challenges, is figuring that out. And we are figuring it out. It's just, again, the Wild West.
Question: is there any trends that you currently are seeing, and then you're leaning more towards?
Depending on the client, but streaming TV is huge. Everybody is cutting the cord, or their cord never. So how do you get this beautiful commercial, this 15-second commercial, to somebody? Because video is the storyteller, and it's a great way to establish brand. So how do you do that? And so we're continuing to see this huge shift of video consumption, is what I would call it, on the streaming platforms. But also we still need to look at that traditional side as well. So that's kind of been the big trend.
And I see our media planning and buying team talking about it a lot too, is with the growth in streaming, there's also so many vendors in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and then you have people like the big names like Netflix, they got into ad space, Amazon, it's happening. So vetting those two of, is the audience size there? What does the placement look like there? And those are just 2 bigger names, but then there's just so many vendors in the space that, aside from just like having a Netflix, they are aggregators of that space. So the way that they use their data and they insert and their placements and their content could be completely different than the other ones. And so those vendors are out there approaching clients all the time. And it's a lot to understand of, well, what's your value? Why are you different than this one? So our team is always analyzing. We have a giant form that we have vendors fill out so we can vet them and understand, are they the right fit for our clients? And so I think that's a big space too, of not just, consumers moving to streaming, is the number of companies that are getting in the ad space.
It is super overwhelming.
Yeah.
We have had a lot of clients that come, and either they'll get that call from Google, for example, and they're like, okay, I need to do Google. And I'm like, okay, but what are you selling? And is that the right choice for you? And then what's your budget? And they haven't even thought that far.
Right.
Or the other side of that is, I'm totally overwhelmed. There's too many options, all of that. So having someone that you can go to that can be a partner in this, that can say, we got it. You just, you talk to us about your goals and objective, because imagine, I mean, that's a lot.
I'm just thinking, is like, from a customer coming perspective, I'm gonna give you an example or a experiment. Like, let's say there's a company, I don't know, maybe it's called Brokey, you know what I'm saying? And this company
we're launching, maybe.
Oh.
potentially. And this company is selling like hair care products like pomade. What type of advertising placement do you recommend for that company to get the biggest ROI?
So it's e-commerce, so the first place we would probably want to be is in the digital space. You're going to go through maybe some social, building it up that way, because it's probably a smaller, I don't know what the target is, but from an ROI, that's where you're going to be able to track it. And so attribution's big, and we all know that last click always is the one that is going to get the conversion. So, layering in some lower funnel, more trackable pieces would be important, but then also just looking to see if there's anything else we can do. I think a big thing is also, if you have a new client, what creative assets do you have? Because that's going to limit it too. I might tell you need to do streaming TV, and you're going to go, I don't have a spot, so we can't. But learning what those are and your KPI is, we would just kind of we would figure out what that media mix is.
Well, mine's running right now, so I'm thinking.
No, well, part of what we are doing with Brokey is we're documenting the launch of a product.
Which is extremely
and because it's not just the launch of a product, is the development of a product.
Oh, yeah.
And so that
That's
we
cool.
can share with because our audience, we've realized, is pretty mixed. There's a lot of people who are either early stage business, entrepreneurs, people who want to get into, they're thinking about starting a business. And one of the best ways that we can help is just by being super transparent and showing people how we problem solve, how we go through each step, at what stage are we going to bring on partners or this or that. So the branding side actually in our case was a lot easier than, for
Yeah.
example, we're,
The development.
than the development of the actual like
Let's just say
pomade.
the pomade kind of the first versions of the pomade kind of ripped my hair off a little bit,
Oh.
but
Sticky.
yeah, it was too much beeswax. But
Yeah.
this new phase of the testing, I'm very confident it's gonna be a lot better.
Yeah.
The goal for the pomade, honestly, is to one, educate the consumers that you can start up a company with a basic an idea and a
Mhm.
budget of like $10,000. Originally, we were gonna do like a white label system, just take a product, slap a
Mhm.
label, resell it. But for the budget and for like the average consumer, thinking I'm like, okay, do they have like the resources to find leverage or find capital, find different ways to launch this product? Most likely not. So we took it in a different approach. It's like let's develop it with a smaller budget and let's see how we can actually grow this.
And also, we realized that, for example, if you do a white label system, your costs are higher. So then you have to push it onto the consumer because you're paying someone else to develop, and then you're adjusting your formula
Yeah.
for you. And we realized after doing market research, which is why tying that back to this, that would put us at a premium price point, and we didn't want to sell a premium product because we wanted it to be
Even
something the highest quality possible, but something that people could genuinely afford.
yeah, even though like the white label system just didn't have enough profit. It
Yeah.
was I think it was sub like 10%. And once you're developing
Mhm.
yourself, you're more around the 30 to 40%. And if you develop like our strategy is going to do a two-part. We're doing direct to consumer, then we're doing a wholesale department.
Mhm.
So on both end, you're still making a low end 30% and a high end 50%.
And it's interesting, like as you were talking, I was thinking like the things you're saying now are shaping your media strategy because you
Mhm.
picked, okay, we want to be able to be affordable. So like as you're defining your audience, those are things that you would bring to your media partner and say, okay, we are at this price point. It's probably men, all men, mostly men.
Mostly men.
Okay.
Females can
I
use
guess
it.
women could pick it up. I still my husbands to do those like nice sharp
Yeah.
sometimes, so maybe. But you kind of are getting an idea of who your target audience is, and then that's when Kelly would easily be able to say, okay, yes, it'll still mostly be digital, but specifics of like these tactics. So the more you build out your who you're trying to reach and the why and the what and when, that
Yeah.
shapes
Okay,
everything.
question. I'm curious to know if you guys do media buys for ad space in I'm thinking in like the physical world, like say at an event. If there was an event going on, could are you involved in that?
Absolutely.
That's super important because that, getting to not just the digital space, but saying, okay, what if we want an activation,
Right.
and then how do you guide that process?
So typically it's a team effort. So activations, you need to have your client, involved in those. Like we don't have the team for the activation, but we're here to help kind of connect you to the right people. We do a lot of like conventions if you were looking at stuff like that or like, those sorts of things. We can evaluate what are the best places to be and just kind of give you what that cost would look like. But we're here to help get you in the right place, connect your message to the right person.
One thing I like about you guys, and when we were going through our little thing, is how transparent you were with budgets and
Mhm.
transparent on each platform estimated budget for success based
Yeah.
off the goals we had. I think sometimes like like smaller businesses or even larger businesses don't fully have that information available, and by you guys
Oh,
providing that,
even larger businesses.
Yeah.
We have had clients come to us and, sometimes we'll audit their strategy. And especially because we're looking at the comprehensive, we've
Yeah.
seen that people are spending, gosh, $50,000 to $100,000 even a month, and then you look at they're throwing money, and they don't have a super clear idea. I remember working with this business a few years ago, and they had just kind of gotten sold on this guy who they were convinced could get them sales, and they were getting a lot of sales, but they were not getting nearly as many as they should have with the
Right.
money they were spending. And so part of it is just having that trusted
Yeah,
partner.
or even like me. So when I started the barbershop like 7 years ago, I didn't know anything about advertising. I knew that I knew a little bit, you know what I'm saying? But it was there was a rep that came through our shop, and he came through the shop. He's like, I prefer this company that puts your ad on different TVs in like stadiums, and Planet Fitness. And I was like, cool, Planet Fitness. He sold me on $14,000 for a few months on Planet Fitness, and then for the Weather Channel. So my ad would come with the Weather Channel,
crawler.
the crawler.
Yep.
I got probably like one client for that
Yeah.
$14,000. It was a really bad investment.
That's what, that's what we're here for. We're the filter. We consider ourselves vendor agnostic. So we're not going to pick our favorite or push you towards something that probably won't be successful. We're here to look at all of it and make sure that you're in the right spot. We're also the people that you just put, all the salespeople who come and contact you, just send them to us. We talk to them, we get a point of view together, we send it along and let you know, yes, we think it's something to consider. No, it's not. But we're your resource there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, as Kelly said, we're vendor agnostic. So a lot of the questions you guys ask, like, what would you do? Well, it depends. And like, that's the answer so many times. And we get that a lot. Like, okay, well, what would you do? Well, right now we wouldn't do anything because we need a full conversation. We need a deep dive. We need the research. We need to understand your business because it's not cookie cutter at all. It's not going to be like, just use Planet Fitness only. It's probably going to be a multi-level strategy. So that's kind of funny. It
Yeah.
made me think about that is we say, well, it depends a lot.
Yeah.
Depends on what you're trying to do. It depends on who you're trying to reach.
We don't want you to spend money just to spend money. We want it to be successful because if you're not successful, then we're not successful. And so if you have $200, I'm going to go, I don't think that's going to be enough. Maybe just wait a little bit. I don't want you to waste your money. Or if you have $100,000, we're not going to just funnel in one spot. Let's diversify and make sure that we're hitting all the places we need to hit.
Yeah.
Me and Emma seeing, so we're more on the creative side. We work with companies to develop websites. Sometimes like the creatives for their own campaigns they're running. And I remember we had conversations with, I think, with 2 different practices where we're telling them, hey, maybe you should probably not do this strategy. This is why you shouldn't do this strategy. They did the strategy. They didn't get the return they wanted, and they came back to us and they're like, okay, how do we actually adjust this? And I was like, it's not about the sales. It's about the messaging that you're actually putting on the campaign itself.
Yeah.
And yeah, they have to work hand in hand for sure. And so just what you said about, okay, well, I could recommend a TV spot, but if they don't have we don't want someone slapping together, just to make it happen, it has to really make sense. And so when our stage of the customer journey is, we hear those goals and we're like, okay, well, then how do we articulate that? Something we've noticed for a lot of our clients is a simple customer testimonial does so well, especially if we can keep it under a minute, under 30 seconds even, and get a video testimonial or before and afters, and like those kind of things where we can like prompt our clients, like we have data to show that really resonates with people.
And the cool thing about it is like it's not just the testimonial, it's the way the testimony is recorded. So
the way it's recorded, the questions that are asked,
because if you bring a camera like one of these cameras, so you need like 4K quality, it seems kind of like fake versus you taking your phone on and just taking the spot and
but
recording.
It also totally depends on just like, so we actually are the same way. We're like, well, it depends because who's your clientele? What is your brand? What is your brand voice, which is something we ask a lot. Like if you're in luxury business, for example, we recently had someone on who's a good friend of ours who works with the Post Oak. And if they were to do, a series of kind of testimonial videos, they better be doing it at, 4K, high quality, whatever, because
8K
that
at that point for those price points.
8K, there you go.
For those price points of those rooms.
No, but that sort of that fits their brand, right? It's the same thing you would expect from a Four Seasons. It's the same thing you would expect from anything, of that elevated status, whereas other brands may really benefit from that super organic, I'm going to pull up my phone and it will seem off the cuff, but it's actually, we've planned it out pretty intensely. So
Yeah.
And I think I've heard you guys talk about too, like platform specific, like TikTok, the really high, like well done ones don't do as well. It needs to feel authentic. So like there's also the consideration of like what medium is being used
exactly
for which content and which audience.
The cool thing I'm noticing about you guys in this conversation is you're putting the customer first. Like you're customer centric, and then everything else revolves around their goals and objectives. And then for a lot of like for me, who I'm working with you guys, it's like it's an awesome way to approach business that way because then you're making sure that my business is successful.
Yeah, I think everything that we do, we want to build a relationship. So as Kelly mentioned, like if you come and you say we have $200, we're not going to say like, okay, well, we'll put it here because we're like, it's not going to work. And then that's just that's a bad first date. So, it's about the long-term success. I think most of our clients, we have a big list of clients that have been with our agency for over 2 decades.
Mhm.
And that is because as much as we're customer centric, we're also client centric. And that relationship piece means so much to us.
I think that's the same for us. I mean, we are celebrating 50 years this year. And from when my dad originally founded the Idea Farm. And what's wild is that we still get clients come in the door. Oh, yeah, actually, I worked with your dad 20 years ago. Loved what he did. We got an email recently I sent to Jose saying, hey, the Idea Farm helped launch my career. And then I was able to grow my business and sell my business. And then what's crazy is that you have that whole generation of people that have come back because of your reputation, and then it just sort of, it builds on there. So we're really, really glad that you guys got to come in and sit down with us and break down media buying, kind of the demystifying something that's such an important part of, growing businesses, but not something that's as easy for people to understand.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. We'll see you guys next time. If you like this kind of content, please don't forget to like, subscribe, give us a comment below if you have any media buying questions, and maybe we can get some answers for you. Thank you guys so much. Bye.